Good evening and welcome to the storytelling session. I am Sherline of Kathanika. I'm here to present you a story. This storytelling session is part of the ongoing festival called Aaghosham. Aaghosham, the word means celebration. In this festival, the Jaya He Museum, which is at the Terminal 2 of the Mumbai International Airport, is a celebration of the culture and the practices of Kerala. Today, I bring to you a couple of stories. One about a temple, a 4,000-year-old temple that is in Palakkad and exists to this very day. And the other of a legendary figure called Perumthachan. Let us first look at the creation of Kerala. Legend has it that Parshuraman had just finished the war with the Kshatriyas. He had killed them, he had won the war. After the war was over and Parshuraman was victorious, he looked around him and he saw there was blood everywhere. Parshuraman was remorseful. He came to the conclusion that he had done bad. He wanted to atone for his sin of killing so many people, and so he decided to pray. But to pray, he needed a pure piece of land, one on which there was no blood. Parshuraman looked wide and far, but he could not find such a piece of land. So he decided that he would have to create one. Parshuraman took his axe and plunged it into the ocean and pulled up a piece of land. So the land began rising from the ocean. It began rising and rising and rising, and it would not stop. Parshuraman did not know how to make the land stop from rising. He was worried. So he went to Narada and he placed his problem before Narada. How do I make it stop? He said. Narada said, well, I don't know the answer. I cannot give you a solution, but I think you must take your problem to Vishnu, and Lord Vishnu would be able to help you. So Parshuraman went to Lord Vishnu and told Lord Vishnu of all that had happened. Lord Vishnu looked at Parshuraman and said, okay, I can help you. You need to offer prayers to me in my Varaha avatar. So build me a temple and pray to the Varaha avatar of myself. So Parshuraman went back down to earth. He went to that land that he had created and he built a temple to the Varaha avatar of Vishnu. And in this temple, he began offering prayers. And the land stopped rising. And this land came to be known as Kerala. And that temple that Parshurama built is still there today. It still exists in the Palakkad district. The name of the temple is the Panniyur Temple. The Panniyur Temple. So that is the story of the Panniyur Temple. And this was 4,000 years ago. Said to be 4,000 years ago. Let us fast forward to 1,000 years later, that is 3,000 years ago. And let us go to the north of India, to the kingdom of Avanti and into the court of the king Chandragupta. At the court of Chandragupta, there were many ministers, and there was one minister who was a famous astronomer. His name was Vararuchi. Vararuchi was said to be a very intelligent man. When Chandragupta passed away, Chandragupta's son, Vikramaditya, was too young to be placed on the throne. So the entire court decided that Vararuchi be made the proxy king and that he should rule Avanti until Vikramaditya can become the ruler. And so Vararuchi ruled the kingdom of Avanti for a couple of years. And when Vikramaditya became mature enough to take his seat as the king, Vararuchi abdicated in favor of Vikramaditya. Vikramaditya was a very illustrious king. He captured most of the kingdoms around and he became emperor. At the court of Emperor Samrat Vikramaditya, and this Vikramaditya is the same Vikramaditya as the one of the Vikrama Betal fame. So at the court of Vikramaditya was Vararuchi, the astronomer. Now, Samrat Vikramaditya was often in the habit of putting a challenge or asking a riddle to his ministers to test their capabilities. So one fine day, King Vikramaditya said to Vararuchi, Vararuchi, tell me, which of the lines from the Ramayana of Valmiki do you think are the most important lines of all? Vararuchi looked at the king and he said, Your Highness, my lord, this is a very difficult question and I cannot answer you immediately. I need some time to think. Vikramaditya said to Vararuchi, all right, you get 40 days. And after 40 days, I must have your answer. Vararuchi agreed and he left the court. Now the problem was quite a complex one. Vararuchi needed to think. So Vararuchi began wandering around the kingdom. He went to gardens, he went to orchards, he went to city streets, he went to small village roads, he went to the forest, he went to the seashore, he went to the mountainside. All these places he went to, he began thinking about the Ramayana and wondering which of the lines are the most important. In such a manner, Vararuchi, the astronomer, wandered around for 39 days and 39 nights. On the 40th day, Vararuchi found himself in a forest. As he walked through the forest, he was a troubled man. The time was almost up, but he had not yet found the answer to the question of the king. It was now night time. The sun had set, it had got dark, all the birds and animals had settled down for their night. Vararuchi was tired. He looked around and he found a peepal tree. Under the peepal tree there looked to be some place that would make a nice shelter for Vararuchi. So he went to that tree, sat down between the roots of the tree and fell asleep. After a couple of hours, Vararuchi woke up and he found that what had disturbed his sleep was a conversation. There were two people talking. Vararuchi, in his half awake, half asleep state, heard this conversation, listened to this conversation. These two were two Vanadevtas or Gandharvas who were having a conversation, and one said to the other, "Oh, isn't this that Brahmin, that minister, that astrologer from the court of Vikramaditya, who is looking for the answers as to which is the most important line from the Ramayana, which are the most important lines?" The other Gandharva replied, "Oh, the poor man, doesn't he know that the Mama Vidhi are the most important lines of the Ramayana, of the Valmiki's Ramayana? And this poor man, he doesn't even know that he is going to marry a girl who is from a lower caste, a Parai girl, who has just been born in the house of that Parai couple, that house that is at the edge of the forest, that is outside the village. This man is going to marry that girl. Poor man." When Vararuchi heard this conversation and he heard the answer to his problem, he sat up and he was alert. And he was happy that he now had the answer to the king's question. But then he thought about the latter part of the conversation and he was sad. And then he got a little angry. He thought to himself, how can I, a Brahmin, a high caste person, marry a girl who is from the lower caste? A Parai girl? It's impossible. I must stop this from happening. And Vararuchi decided that he would go and take measures to stop such a thing from happening. Vararuchi looked around. It was still dark. So he went out of the forest. He went to the outskirts of the village. He found the cottage. He went to the cottage, and inside the cottage was a couple, a man and a woman, who were fast asleep. Next to the woman was a small baby girl who had just been born a couple of hours previous. The baby was also asleep. Vararuchi entered that hut and he took the baby from its mother with the intention of killing the child. He took that child and he ran to the banks of the river, and he thought to himself, here is where I'm going to kill this child so that this fate can never happen. The prophecy should not and cannot come true if I kill the child. But when Vararuchi actually went to carry out the act of killing the child, he found he was not able to do it. He was not able to kill that little girl. So he thought that I must do something else. Moreover, it is not right for a Brahmin to commit murder. He looked at the river and he had an idea. How about I put this girl in a basket and float her down the river? And maybe the river will carry her away from here, far, far away from here. And maybe if she goes really, really far away, our paths will not cross. And if that doesn't happen, well, we will not marry each other. So Vararuchi looked around and found a basket. He was about to put the child in the basket when another thought struck him. He said, but what if the girl survives? And what if I meet her a couple of years from now? I must know that it is the same girl. And so Vararuchi, he picked up a nail. Now the story says that he put the nail in the child's forehead. But I think he may not have put the nail directly, but he may have put a mark there. He may have put a tattoo on her forehead. Now this was quite possible because the art of tattooing was practiced in ancient Kerala. So he put a mark on the girl's forehead, and then he put her in the basket and he floated her down the river. When he saw that the basket was carried away by the currents, he thought maybe she might drown and I'll just get lucky. After having attended to this business, Vararuchi hurried back to the palace. It was the 40th day. The court of Vikramaditya was full of ministers and other courtiers, everybody waiting for Vararuchi to come and give the answer to the king's question. Vararuchi went to the court and very confidently he answered the king, Your Highness, you wanted to know which are the most important lines from the Valmiki's Ramayana. Well, the answer is the Mama Vidhi. King Vikramaditya was very happy. The answer, Vararuchi had given the right answer. He looked at Vararuchi and he said, I am satisfied with your answer. Ask me whatever you want and I will reward you. I will give you whatever you ask for. While this conversation was happening, Vararuchi was always thinking. He was continuously thinking about this girl and about the prophecy. He said, I've given the right answer, but what about this girl? How can I marry a girl from a lower caste? It must not happen. And I must take double measures to ensure that this does not happen at all. What if that girl has not been carried away by the river? Maybe she's still living inside this kingdom. And so Vararuchi looked at the king and he said to the king, Your Highness, I wish that you give an order to kill all the girl children who were born yesterday, who were born last night amongst the people of the lower caste, amongst the Parai people. All the girl children must be slaughtered. King Vikramaditya and all the courtiers were very surprised at this strange request. Why should I do that? Said King Vikramaditya. He tried to get an answer from Vararuchi, but Vararuchi refused to say anything. King Vikramaditya said, "Well, I have given you my word that I will fulfill whatever you wish." And so King Vikramaditya issued the order, and all the little girls who were born that night were killed. The little girl child who was put in the basket and floated down the river, well, she did float away. The river carried her many villages across, far away from the place Vararuchi was living at. And the girl was carried by the water. In the river, at a certain village far away, there was a Brahmin man who was offering his morning prayers to the sun god. And when he opened his eyes, he saw in front of him this basket with a little child. The Brahmin took the child home. His wife was very happy to see the child, and both of them decided to adopt that little girl and look after her. So that's how the girl was taken care of and adopted by this Brahmin couple. A couple of years passed by, 15 years to be precise. Vararuchi decided that he would go and explore the places around and outside of the kingdom. And so he was on his journey. Now he came to a certain village, and as he walked into the village, the people there recognized him to be a traveler, an outsider. One Brahmin man invited Vararuchi to his house. He said, "Please come to my house and rest in my house before you carry on with your journey." Vararuchi was happy. He was really tired, so he wanted to rest. He went to the house of this Brahmin, and he was welcomed there by the Brahmin's wife and daughter, young daughter. The Brahmin offered all the hospitality to Vararuchi, and since it was nearing lunchtime, he offered and invited Vararuchi to partake in the family's lunch. Vararuchi looked at the Brahmin and he said, "Oh, I will accept your invitation, but there is one condition. The condition is that you must make 18 curries for me, and you must offer the meal to 100 Brahmins. And after these 100 Brahmins have been fed, I will eat whatever is left over." The host was surprised. He did not know how he was going to fulfill this request. But the daughter of the Brahmin, she looked at her father and she said, "Don't worry." She had overheard the strange request, and she said to her father, "I am confident that I will fulfill it. Don't you worry." So the girl, she went inside to do the preparation, and at lunchtime, she called her father and the guest and made them sit down. She put forth in front of them banana leaves, and on that banana leaf, she served some ginger curry. Now, ginger was symbolic of 18 dishes. And then she put some rice. And this rice was the rice that was left over from the Vishwadeva ceremony. A Vishwadeva ceremony is a ceremony where it is symbolic that you are feeding 100 Brahmins. And so she had put this rice that was a leftover of that ceremony. And so according to the guests' wishes, yes, here was a meal that consisted of 18 curries and the leftover from feeding 100 Brahmins. Vararuchi was happy. He looked at the girl and he knew that this girl was an intelligent girl. Vararuchi immediately asked her father for her hand in marriage. The Brahmin was very happy and the marriage was conducted. Vararuchi got married to this girl, the Brahmin's daughter, and he began living with her. A couple of days passed happily. One afternoon, Vararuchi was sitting with his wife and they were exchanging, they were having a conversation, they were telling each other of their past lives. And while Vararuchi was talking about all the incidents that happened to the time before he met his wife, this girl, he suddenly remembered the incident of the challenge that King Vikramaditya had given to him. it immediately brought to mind what happened later. He remembered the 40 days that he was wandering around. He remembered that strange conversation he had overheard in the forest. He remembered the prophecy that was made regarding his marriage. He also remembered the measures that he had taken so that the prophecy did not come true. And then Vararuchi sat up straight. He looked at his wife and he saw her forehead. And there on the forehead was the mark. This was that child that Vararuchi himself had marked those many years ago. Vararuchi realized then that there is nothing one can do. If fate has something planned for you, it will come true no matter what measures you take. So Vararuchi came to accept this decision that he was to marry a girl from the lower caste, and so be it. He was married to one. Well, after a few months' time, Vararuchi decided that he and his wife should go on a pilgrimage. They wanted to visit all the rivers and all the temples in their country. So Vararuchi and his wife set off on this journey. They visited many temples and many rivers, and soon they found themselves in the land of Kerala. When they entered Kerala, Vararuchi learned that his wife was going to have a child. Vararuchi wasn't very happy about it because he knew that he is a Brahmin and his wife is a Parai, a lower caste girl. He did not want any children from this marriage. And so when the child was born, Vararuchi asked his wife one question. Does the child have a mouth? His wife answered yes. Well, then abandon it, said Vararuchi. If that child has a mouth, he will find a means to feed himself. Vararuchi's wife did as she was commanded, and she abandoned the child. She was going to have a baby a second time. Vararuchi did the same thing when the second child was born, and the third, and the fourth, and the fifth. Vararuchi and his wife went on to have 12 children, and all the children were abandoned in a similar way. Now, all these abandoned children were picked up by people from different castes and different backgrounds, and they were raised and looked after. One of these children was a boy, and this boy was picked up by a man from the Vishwakarma community. The Vishwakarma community are carpenters. This boy was named Raman. Raman was looked after with great love by the Vishwakarma community man. He was trained in the arts of carpentry, and Raman turned out to be a skillful craftsman. He was not only a carpenter but an architect as well and a sculptor. When Raman grew up, he did many projects that were so beautiful, and they say that many of Raman's creations are still around in Kerala in various places, many temples, many sculptures. Raman was now called or given the honorific title of Perumthachan. The word Perumthachan means master carpenter. Perumthachan. But he was not only a carpenter, like I mentioned, he was also an architect, he was a designer, he was a sculptor. Perumthachan took a wife, and very soon Perumthachan had a son, and his wife passed away. Perumthachan looked after this child and taught him his trade. Now, there are a couple of versions that go after this. One of the versions says that Perumthachan was jealous of his son because his son was turning out to be a far skilled craftsman than he himself. One of the versions says that Perumthachan was commissioned to build a temple by a rich landlord. And while Perumthachan was working for this rich landlord, his son was assisting him. And this rich landlord had a daughter of around the same age as Perumthachan's son. And Perumthachan's son and the landlord's daughter met and fell in love. And this was not approved by the girl's father because it was not allowed or it was not seen to be a good match. Even though Perumthachan was a celebrated craftsman, still he was a man from a different caste as the Brahmin, the landowner. So this union was not allowed. And the girl's father requested Perumthachan to somehow stop this union from happening. Perumthachan loved his son dearly, but he saw there was no way that Perumthachan's son was ready to give up his love. The only way left out was to kill the boy. And so Perumthachan, with a very, very heavy heart, when he was building the temple and he was high up on the scaffolding one day, saw his son working directly below it. And this is the time that Perumthachan let go of his chisel, and his chisel fell straight down into the boy's head and killed the boy instantly. Perumthachan was very, very sorrowful after this. He did not know, he was now remorseful. He knew that he did the right thing that could be done at the time. Well, he gave up working and he kept wandering like a nomad from place to place. Perumthachan went to many, many places. And while on this journey, while wandering the streets here and there, he found himself one day to be at Palakkad district and at the Panniyur Temple. Panniyur Temple at that time was undergoing renovation. Now here again there are a couple of versions to the story. One version says that Perumthachan went to the temple of Panniyur and he was employed as a craftsman, as a carpenter. Nobody recognized Perumthachan then because by now he was looking quite different. He had not been working for a long time. He went into the temple and he began working. Now Perumthachan did not talk to a lot of people. And at the lunch hour, all the other workers went to have their lunch, but they did not invite Perumthachan. And Perumthachan felt insulted and angry. So Perumthachan went into the area where the roof of the temple was being constructed and he changed all the markings that were made on all the beams. So when the workmen came back after their break and tried to put the structure together, they found that it would not fit. And that is when Perumthachan went in and he managed to make the whole thing fit and come together. So the craftsmen then realized that this man could only be Perumthachan. And they looked at Perumthachan and they said that if you are going to do all of this by yourself, there will be no work for us. So please, and we will lose our livelihood. Have pity on us. And Perumthachan decided then that he would stop working. And they say that is when he put down his chisel and he kept down his yardstick and he said that I am not going to work anymore. Don't worry, all of you are my brothers, my brother carpenters. You will never have lack of work. You will always have work there for you. This is one version of the story. Another version of the story says that while Perumthachan was working, he was renovating this temple in such a fashion that it was turning out to be quite beautiful. So much beautiful that the gods themselves were threatened in the heavens. They thought to themselves, oh, if Perumthachan makes such a beautiful, magnificent temple down on earth, our temples are not half as good. Indra especially was terribly jealous. He saw that there was this beautiful temple being constructed for Vishnu. So Indra came down to earth. He came down to that temple and he saw the tools of Perumthachan. In anger, he picked up the chisel and he picked up the yardstick and he threw it into the wall. And when Perumthachan came there the next morning, he saw his chisel and his yardstick in the wall and he knew that this could have been put there only by a divine power. And Perumthachan realized that the gods themselves were threatened. and so he decided that he would not work anymore. And the chisel and the yardstick are still there embedded in this temple. If you go to the temple at Panniyur, you can see the chisel and the yardstick embedded in that place. So this temple is still there. This Panniyur temple, which is a Varaha Avatar temple, is supposed to be the oldest temple in Kerala. It was at one time very, very popular. It was the main temple in Kerala. But over time, its popularity died down. This happened around 200 to 300 years back. So at the time when I went to the temple myself, which was around 5 years back, there were hardly any people at this temple. And there is still some construction and renovation work going on at this temple to this day. So true to the promise that Perumthachan made, there are still carpenters employed there. Now, they say that there is a prediction that this temple, though today it is not so well known, like if you talk about Kerala and you talk about temples, you think of the Guruvayur temple, you think about the Padmanabha Swami temple, but nobody quite remembers of this Panniyur temple. But there has been a prediction that this temple will rise to prominence once again, that it will grow popular and there will be lots of people who will once again go and visit this temple. Isn't that a lovely story? Well, that's all I have for you this evening. Thank you so much for joining me. And now we will have a beautiful craft session by Deepthi Panesar. She is going to be showing how to make the snake boats that are famous in Kerala. So do catch that session and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.